промокну счастливым где-то. Мы так странно, нелепо одеты. Пусть летят кометы, мы так странно и нелепо одеты. Пусть льет дождь этим летом, я промокну счастливым где-то. Я промокну счастливым где-то. Мы так странно, нелепо одеты.
You are listening to This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs, so sit back, relax, take your black pill, and enjoy the show.
Good evening, friends. It's time for This Week in Clown World for the first episode of 2024, and wow, what a great start to the year we've had. Lots of stuff to talk about in the last 2 weeks that we've left you absent for our little New Year's hiatus. I mean, we've got the Epstein clients list dropping. We've got Hunter Biden storming out of Congress, throwing a hissy fit about being asked basic questions about his shady dealings. We've got a
new cryptid is found.
Yes, a new cryptid has had a confirmed sighting. The elusive sewer Jew has made an appearance in New York City. Possibly we get the start to World War III and Civil War II on the same day, mere hours apart, as U.S. and U.K. forces have begun conducting airstrikes against Houthi-held areas in Yemen. And the state of Texas has forcibly seized all city-owned property in the city of Eagle Pass, Texas, and told the feds to pound sand and go fuck themselves. So that and more with Simon, of course, later on in the show. Ben, have you had a happy New Year?
I did. Until all this shit started kicking off. I kind of goofed off a bit over the break, picked up playing a game called Project Zomboid, which, I think our audience would enjoy it. It's basically a society collapse simulator. So good time could be had doing that. But yeah, where do we even start with this shit show?
Well, the stuff going on in Texas and the stuff going on in Yemen, I think, would probably be something that we could hit on with Simon towards the bottom of the hour. Because
so you're saying you want to get the sewer Jews?
Yeah, we go ahead and start off there. That seems like an interesting story to get everything started.
The gist of it was, correct me if I'm wrong, you've probably heard it too. You had a Jewish sect in what do they call their temple, and they were two side-by-side buildings. And boy, you get in a rabbit hole reading about these Jewish sects. But one group of this Jewish sect broke off, and another part of the sect pretty much disowned them. And the radical part of the sect believed that the Messiah was living in the building next door. So they were tunneling underneath to try and get into the secret back room and locate the Messiah. Is that about the gist of it?
I heard something along those lines. A lot of it was like this guy started this sect in the 40s or something. They started their little synagogue in that building, and then another group broke off from that group, and it was like the new group had control of the worship area and the old group had control of the communal area, and they were in a disagreement over who should have full control of the building. And it's been in legal battle for a long time, and like the old group was a group of young men was tunneling into the synagogue area so that they could worship without the permission. I mean, it was that's the story we're being told.
And somehow a nasty bloody mattress fits into all this. It's like,
Yeah, God knows what's going on underneath of the city of New York with all the Prohibition era tunnels and the Underground Railroad era tunnels and the building of the city. And I mean, there's stuff that's being lost and discovered every day in a city like that. So who knows? I think probably.
then there was
But
that meme of that bizarre artwork owned by John Podesta of like child rape, and it matched up to the mattress. Did you see that one?
yeah, that's kind of a stretch, but
Yeah.
it's still a little weird. We know that the elites are into some
I mean, I think
pretty.
those guys did more to damage the Jewish brand than maybe even the invasion of Gaza at this point.
It certainly isn't looking good. They're not doing themselves any favors. I saw one meme where it was the guy like crawling out of the sewer grate next to the building. It said you could hand Joseph Goebbels a $100 million film budget and he could never come up with anything this anti-Semitic. As a Hasidic man climbing out of a sewer grate.
Living in a tunnel with shitty bloodstained mattresses. That not a good look, guys.
Yeah, be better.
And and it led to the arrests of them because they were just staying in the tunnels while the city wanted to fill them with concrete because it was creating issues. You can't go digging willy-nilly under buildings. There was another tunnel, the tunnel Karen. Did you see that story? Apparently there was some suburban housewife that was building tunnels under her neighborhood. Same thing. They put a stop to it because you can't just be building tunnels under your neighbors. So they went to fill the sewers with concrete, and these guys refused to come out. So the police went in, dragged them out, and arrested them.
Yeah, there was a fight, a very spirited fight for their Jew tunnel. So
where do you go from that? I guess what's a good segue to the next one with the Jew tunnel?
Oy vey, you gotta fight for your right to dig a tunnel in New York these days. Why not?
And then there was some tweets. I forget who the guy was, but he posted like back in November. He's like, I keep hearing Jewish people under my building.
And I don't have a basement. It's like they're digging tunnels and speaking Yiddish under the floorboards of my house. I'm not crazy. It's like some of you owe me an apology.
Yeah. So maybe there's more than one Jew tunnel going on in New York. I don't know. Maybe it's a thing now.
See, my personal theory, my personal conspiracy theory is that there is a quiet civil war being waged in the ranks of Jewry right now, where the space laser Jews and the sewer Jews are in a fight with each other, and the sewer Jews are tunneling in order to avoid the space laser Jews. That's
painting
that's
the roofs
theory.
Blue.
Yes.
I mean, we could segue into what's going on in Gaza, but the international courts accusing Israel of genocide.
Yeah. South Africa is levying some charges, which I'm not really like 100% sure on the history between those two countries. Once again, we could bring Simon into the conversation to talk about, but I remember like way back in the day when, nuclear weapon or nuclear proliferation was starting to go out. It's like Israel had the technology, but not the fissile material. And South Africa had the fissile material, but not the enrichment technology. And it was like a big fucking deal back in the 80s when South Africa and Israel started, let's make a deal.
Yeah.
And yeah.
A lot of
So
people
that
didn't
happened.
realize that South Africa had nukes at one point. I mean, they got rid of them all supposedly, and that's a little bit of the pot calling the kettle black there, since South Africa went on a whole kill Whitey phase after.
Well, you went from keeping the black people down in an apartheid state, and
Uh-huh.
then I know it's kind of fashionable in certain circles and not so much in other circles to say that Israel is an apartheid state
Mm.
now and has been for a long time. So, back in those days, it's like kind of a match made in heaven. And nowadays it's still, I guess. So the fact that South Africa is the one that's actually bringing up the genocide charges is, it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, good old South Africa. And it's, speaking of an apartheid state, I mean, we got Texas now.
Yes. So I think that we're kind of all over the place. We've taken 2 weeks off.
Yeah, we got a lot to cover.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover. Like down in Texas right now, I got this in the chat about an hour ago. The state of Texas has been doing a lot of work to try and plug the gaps on the illegal immigration front, and the feds have been taking down their fences and cutting their razor wire barricades and threatening to sue, which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense, that the federal government is going to sue a state for the state trying to do its best to enforce federal law. It seems a little bit backwards, but when you're showing up your boss by doing his job for him, you can expect some backlash, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, down in Texas, in Eagle Pass, Texas, they basically seized all city-owned property along the border, and they told the feds to pound sand. Get out. You're not going to be allowed into this area to facilitate any more migrant crossings. Like, you can come in if there's a medical emergency. You can come in to get any of your equipment and gear that you may have left behind. But other than that, kindly fuck off.
Well, and it's crazy how the Biden administration is sticking to this whole open border thing when it seems like everybody is it's like they've got this whole sunk cost going on. Like, well, we fucked it up this bad. We just got to keep it going. I mean, when all the Democratic mayors in these large cities are saying that are saying that their cities are being wrecked. You had the news story. Was it in New York City where they're kicking kids out of school to house migrants?
Yep, James Madison High School. 2,000 students are being sent home to do remote learning as they house migrants within the school building.
Yeah, I mean, how far can you push people at this point? Just to not have to go back on your guns that you said an open border was the way to go, when obviously it's an absolute mess.
Yeah, it's really kind of an interesting position to be in for people like you and I that are kind of ensconced in the libertarian movement, because open borders, or the theory of open borders, is a bedrock plank of libertarian ideology, small L libertarian ideology, and it's a bedrock plank of the big L Libertarian Party platform. And we're seeing in real time that open borders, well, okay, so in a world of nation states, which we are in, and that's not going to change anytime soon, open borders is a very, very bad idea. So how, like, we're watching it happen in real time. Like, it's all of the proof is there on our southern border, and it's also taking place in Europe and has taken place in Europe for a long time. So how is it that the open borders wing of our party, the Libertarian Party, how are they squaring that circle in their own heads, or is it is it simply a case of the cognitive dissonance where bad things are happening? So, if it weren't for borders at all, this wouldn't be happening. It's like, yeah, but that's that's the perfect being the enemy of the good. It's like, you're not going to get rid of borders anytime soon. You're not going to get rid of nation states anytime soon. You're not going to get rid of the self-selected segregation that people naturally divvy themselves up into, whether it's due to nationality, ethnicity, religion. People segregate themselves into certain groups, and to keep those groups separated from each other, we institute borders amongst ourselves. It's a natural state of the human condition.
Mhm.
So, like, national borders, as we have them now, and the concept that we have them now, it's not ideal. It's not perfect. Hell, there could be an argument made that they're not even a good thing at all. But I don't see any other option right now. So, like, what do you think about that?
Well, I think an open board. I mean, you need to let in as many people. People are a commodity as far as having a nation state's concerned. I mean, you're seeing that with like Japan. China's running into the issue now too, where you have these ethno states. You need new people to keep it going. So allowing in lots of people is a good thing as long as you're doing it properly, if you ask me. Where you just have them wandering in, no sort of paper trail whatsoever on them, there's no way that system can work. I mean, and then where you give free stuff to people not within, it's all right if you're within the system. Like you have our vets and you have homeless on the books already that are receiving subsidies. You keep track of those, or they're just giving it out without keeping track of it at all. I mean, that's so much abuse that can go on right there.
Yeah, and it's not just abuse, and we've talked about this several times before, where you have people from an incompatible culture who don't speak the language, do not have the requisite education and skill set level that it takes to be successful in this country, and you're just letting them come in here. The only option that they have is to go on the government dole and be a net drain on society, or starve.
I mean, there's enough jobs. I mean, if you were bringing those people in legally, you'd have companies probably, I mean, getting them put on the books. You'd probably have companies lining up at the border to take them to work at something. You know what I mean? All right, well, you're coming across. Well, you got to have a job waiting. There'd just be a bus going to a packing plant, construction site, whatever. I mean, there's enough support system in America for Hispanic Americans that they could live and work anywhere.
Mm. Eventually that's going to dry up, and I know that the argument is made that the more people you have, the more you have to provide for them. Not provide for them like subsidize or be on the government dole, but
Mhm.
the more people there are, the more they're consuming. The more production that you need, the more jobs that creates, and it just kind of is a cycle. But eventually you're going to get to the point where you're going to have diminishing returns. And, like I said, unless you want to become or enforce, or however you want to do it, a two-tiered society where you've got the native born English speaking Americans that live in one level of a certain standard of living, and then you have essentially an underclass of lower educated, lower skilled Spanish speaking people who are basically just there to do minimum wage shit jobs that the upper crust Americans don't want to do. Then that swing it right back around to an apartheid state, right?
I'm not saying the Romans weren't onto something, but I mean, you don't have. I mean, that's basically how the Roman Empire worked. You had cheap immigrants come in as slave labor and whatnot. And until we have robots that can do that stuff, I mean, you're gonna need that one step above a slave
Yeah.
wagey working those
Well,
jobs.
see, but I don't think that we need that type of person. So, okay, so for one example, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, one popular summertime job for teenagers was detasseling. You would go out
Hmm.
in the field and you would cut the tassels off of the corn, and that was something that high school kids would do on their summer break, make a few bucks, right?
Shit work.
I haven't. Yeah, it's dirty, it's hot, it's exhausting, but it's entry level job to teach a young person the value of a hard day's work and the value of a dollar. Since I have moved back to this area in 2012, I have not seen one single busload of teenagers doing detasseling. I have seen grown 20, 30, 40-year-old Hispanic men. I have never seen teenagers doing it since I've been back for the last 11 or 12 years. And same thing with like fast food jobs, entry level jobs for teenagers, working at a gas station, entry level jobs for teenagers, stocking shelves at Walmart or Menards or whatever. Those are entry level jobs that used to be taken up by teenagers to teach them the value of a hard day's work and the value of a dollar. It's now being done by low skill, lower educated, possibly doesn't speak the language. And that's not a knock on the people that are doing those jobs now, but I think that teenagers not having the discipline that's inherent with an entry level job is just one more brick in the wall of why our society's collapsing into a heap the way that it is. Because you got a bunch of entitled brats now that just expect everything to be given to them because some fucking brown skinned wagey that doesn't speak English is going to do all the hard work for them.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, you've got it's a two-tiered system now, like you said. That's probably why the Democrats have become the corporation party at this point, and that might be part of why they're not fixing open borders, because it really benefits those corporations to have those wage slaves available to them, who aren't going to complain. You're going to show up every day, threaten them with deportation or whatever, and they'll get back to work.
Right. It drives the wages down because you have an increasing number of people competing for the same jobs. So that benefits the corporate class. You have a larger number of people ostensibly consuming, so that is the Chamber of Commerce and the GDP line on the graph go up crowd that's appeased with that. You have idle hands of America's youth with nothing to do but engage in online degeneracy and eventually get on the government dole and become dependent upon the state. So that appeases the political class. And meanwhile, with wages going down, government spending going up, the middle class is shrinking. Small businesses are being run out of business by the larger corporations that can afford to buy their competition out, and society begins to circle the drain.
Well, and historically in America, with each wave of immigrant, the prior group is elevated up into that middle class. At first, the English were here first, and then you started having, Italians, Germans move in, and, they built into that middle class. And where there isn't a middle class anymore, there's nowhere for the lower wage scale to bump those people up into. You know what I mean? There's nowhere for them to go.
Right. Prior to the 60s, though, the immigration in this country was largely controlled.
Yep.
And it was slow enough so that those new lower wage, possibly non-English speaking, non-educated people that were coming from all corners of the world for a better life in America, they came in, they got those jobs. There were few enough of them that they weren't over competing with the youth of America that were already here for those jobs. They were able to learn a skill set, learn the language, have some kids, get them educated, and then they were able to bump themselves up into the middle class, and then you'd have a new trickling wave of immigrants come in and the cycle would start all over again. What we have now is just an open floodgate of people coming in, too many, too fast to assimilate, and for the system that we have in the country to adjust to the shock.
Yeah.
It's a system shock. It's too much, too fast, and a lot of the people are coming for the wrong reasons.
Well, and it seems like at these border crossings, you see it's like 90% male also. You know,
Hmm.
what's going on with in these other countries? Are they just all women down there? I don't understand. That's another aspect that I find bizarre.
Well, I'm not going to say that it's inevitable or that this is what's going on, but somebody said that when a person immigrates to a new country to build a better life for themselves, they bring their family. And when a country or a people goes to war, they send their men. Now, I'm not saying that Latin America or any of the other countries that they're coming from are going to war with us, but
Well, does that mean that they're just leaving their families there and they're just thinking they're gonna be here temporary and pillage as much as they can, or I mean, what? It's such a bizarre concept to me that they're just leaving their families there.
right, it is, and it seems to be that that's what's going on. Um, Again, this is kind of an unprecedented event in human history that I can think of, because calling it a war, calling it an invasion, calling it any of those terminologies evokes, I think, a false premise, at least in my mind. Because when I think of an invasion or I think of a war, I think of uniforms, weapons, coordination,
Mhm.
unity of cause. A private in a military that is invading another country may not have the big picture, but they know enough that we're going into here, we're going to take this territory, we're going to take that hill. There's a unity of cause that they are striving for. Whereas what's going on down on our southern border, there's no general that's pointing and saying, go and take that territory, or at least not that I know of. There's no shot caller. There's no objective. There's no uniform. There's no. It's it's an anarchic type of, or not even that. I mean, there's no on the ground coordination. There is no on the ground unity. There is no on the ground objective. Now there may be somebody pulling some strings, but to what end?
Well, and now is the media not showing how fucked up South America is? I mean, why are these guys so willing to go live on a sidewalk in New York or Chicago from Venezuela or Ecuador? I mean, are we not being told how bad the situation is in South America? Is it in shambles? I mean, we don't know.
See, I don't think that's the case. I think that things down in South America are not that bad. I think that the people that are coming here are being told a lie, that if you come to America, you're going to get a welfare check, you're going to get free housing, you're going to get free health care, you're going to, because America is just so wealthy, they're going to take care of you no matter what. And they get here and they're like, oh shit, I'm living on a sidewalk in New York City in the middle of a New York City winter. I'm possibly freezing to death, and holy shit, there's a Hasidic man climbing out of the sewer grate next to
Yeah,
me.
right. I'm hearing
To
Guinness
kind
from
of,
the sewers all night.
yes, to kind of bring that around full circle.
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
it'll be interesting to see what the feds say about Texas doing that. They don't even have the balls to stand up to. Well, apparently they did stand up to the Houthis finally, but I mean, I doubt they'll stand up to Texas and go in there and force them to reopen the park.
I don't know. Now, this is something that Simon and Sam over Weaponized News have been covering for the last couple of days. I didn't watch their episode tonight. I'll watch that in the morning on my drive into work. But yeah, they've been covering the right wing conspiracy theory, if you think it's a bad thing, and
Mhm.
the inevitable march of progress, and a totally awesome, totally inevitable course of human events, if you think it's a good thing, theory of replacement migration. So if you want to bring old Simon in here, we'll get his.
I mean, maybe you found out the plot hole that we were looking for in that new Civil War movie. I mean, California and Texas team up over migration. I know. You drop
I don't know.
Simon up here. Simon, you there?
Yes, I am.
Welcome, sir. Welcome to 2024.
Indeed. So I'm unfortunately 11 and a half days ahead of you, it would seem. But since you had me at online degeneracy and in line with the first-person shooter games, can I just check that we've ruled out having a 2,000-mile long, 2-mile wide free-fall zone manned by robots?
What? Is that the border?
Yeah, that's the border, right?
Oh,
Sure.
okay.
So what's I watched your episode from last night with Sam, and you were talking about the UN and the US's plan for this managed migration, and I know this kind of hooks into what we're talking about here with what's going on down on the southern border. So has anything changed in the 24 hours since then?
No, that's their 5-year strategic plan led by Amy Pope, who's an American citizen that our national security advisor and Secretary of State boasted they had jammed into that position. And her role is to stand there with her foot wedged hard to keep the door open to as many millions as can pour across as possible.
Okay, so earlier we were sitting there talking, and a lot of people they call it an invasion, or some type of they use quasi-military language to describe what's going on, and I kind of explained how I don't like to use that, because when you think of an invasion, you think of a military, you think of an objective, you think of generals pointing where to go, and units in uniforms, going towards the objective, and this is just like barely managed chaos. So with what's going on down there, I mean, is there some shady general behind the scenes pointing these people in the direction of the United States? What orders are being given, if any? Or is this, like we talked about, there is no paper trail, there is no FOIA that you can file to figure out who's giving the orders and where? This is all just kind of like innuendo, telling people to, in the news, or it'd be a damn shame if 20,000 people stormed Eagle Pass tomorrow, and then somehow people just know that they have to go in a crowd of 20,000 people to Eagle Pass. Like, what is going on, and to what end?
Well, that's because we've all been brainwashed into accepting that our wives don't like to be objectified. So we're not recognizing the objective, right? And unfortunately, this is a big scheme. And that's exactly what this 29-page document that got published yesterday morning, we covered literally same day at length for an hour. People can just go to at UN Migration or at UN Migration Chief, watch her 3-minute video presentation, or read the document. The key pages of the document are 5, 10, 18, and 20. If I remember off the top of my head, 5, 10, 18, and 20. And they just say, sorry, guys, you're fucked, and we're coming, and, please leave your house in a tidy order while we move in. And I'm not exaggerating.
Jeez. So what is the stated purpose of flooding millions and millions of people in?
Yeah, they want to double the population in order to halve the per capita income, in order to generate worldwide equity by raising poor countries up 1 step and lowering America down 4 steps.
So this is all just in the pursuit of the harebrained scheme of, we're going to make everybody equal, even if it's equally miserable together.
It's equity. So it's the equality of outcomes as opposed to equality of opportunity. Mm-hmm. So it's true kind of communism, and they flat out say, and they have a chart to this effect, that their goal is to implement via migration 7 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals for 2030.
So if they're going with this stupid sustainability and they're trying to throw the eco angle at it while simultaneously browbeating countries like the United States and regions like Europe, these first world regions, that we're the ones that our high standard of living is polluting the world, wouldn't, at least in the short term, I mean, maybe they think they're going to bring us down a peg and that's going to level things out eventually, but bringing millions and millions of people into these first world zones to wouldn't that kind of shoot their whole eco angle in the foot, where now you got millions of people living to first world standards, at least temporarily, before the system
No,
collapses?
because they won't live to first world standards. They'll you know, assuming that somehow the economies could be maintained and a civil war wouldn't be triggered if hypothetically the economy is a $50 trillion economy, right? And it's 50 trillion divided by 350 million. And their goal is to halve the per capita income. Either you halve the economy or you double the population if you want to double the size of your denominator. So that'll be a $50 trillion economy divided by 700 million. And Canada's said flat out that they're looking to double the size of their population. They want to take it from 35 million roughly to 70 million in 30 years by flying in from all over the world 1 million people a year. And Australia is going to double their 28 million population by flying in 60,000 people a year, despite no plans for increasing roads, schools, hospitals, or housing.
Okay, so one, where are these people coming from? Two, what is going to happen to the areas that these people are leaving from? Because they're not just springing up out of the ground like corn. They have to come from somewhere, and those places,
so by reducing the population in those areas, you reduce the denominator, so your per capita income goes up without improving the economy. Okay. And so you're pulling America down, pushing South America up, and so it all equals out.
Well, I assume they're just removing it's not like the rich in South America are fleeing. I mean, you're just removing all their lower class at that point. That can't be good for society. Trump's
saying they're emptying their prisons and their asylums.
Yes. Meanwhile, all of our asylums are shut down and our prisons are full of people who got caught with a gram of weed in their pocket.
I mean, it seems like increasing your middle class by getting rid of your lower class so the ratio goes up isn't a sustainable way to do it to me.
Well, so you're trying to read logic into a system that they're operating under the idea that an economy is a fixed pie, right? Like he was saying, like it's a $50 trillion economy, and if you divide it by 350 million people, if you just double that, then you're not. Well, I mean, yeah, if 50 trillion is the hard cap, but economies fluctuate; they go up and down. They change with the times. They change with innovation. They change with the types of industry and other factors in there. It's not a fixed pie. These people are.
And I'm not an eat the rich type, but the rich are making money hand over fist anymore. I mean, the amount of billionaires just keeps increasing and increasing.
They're supposedly the most evil people in the world, allegedly, according to the people who are pushing for this harebrained scheme. So, is this just ideological blindness? Because if somebody, some dipshit like me can see the holes in this plan, surely either A, they're aware of it and they're just willingly being like, nope, it'll work, just give it time, or B, they're full of shit and what they're telling us they want to do isn't what they actually want to do, right?
Yeah, so originally when the UN proposed replacement migration, which has become an even more urgent problem for South Korea and Japan, they say that to maintain just a population, right, you need to have 2.1 children per couple.
Fair enough.
Okay. In South Korea at the moment, it's 0.75.
Whoops.
0.75. And America's something like 1.8. Like Japan's like 1.1. France is like 1.4. And these are the main countries that are listed in the 1999 UN migration plan. But I seem to recall we've discussed it in the past, but I'll happily go over it. But they had crazy assumptions that you could replace a 70-year-old American lawyer, doctor, accountant, lumberjack with a 20-year-old male or female with exactly the same qualifications, with zero impact upon your economy or upon your cohesion of society.
Well, I mean, we're seeing that now with all these boomers that retired so late in their 70s.
Yeah, and that's been completely and utterly like South Korea and Japan just went drop dead. We're not bringing in 20 million Africans. We're just not, right? Same as Poland and Hungary. They just said we're not doing it. And but the countries that have tried this experiment, like France and Britain, these people do not have advanced postgraduate degrees. They are not coming in half women, half men. They are not having 2 children per family as opposed to 8. And they are placing a burden on the social welfare system. They don't speak the language, and they don't want to integrate into the domestic culture.
Right.
Every single assumption that their plan was based upon in 1999 when it was published turned out to be totally false. Every single assumption.
Right. And when you're talking about, groups like Japan and South Korea that are having like near or sub 1 child per couple, non-replacement level of birth rates, and you're saying, oh, you need immigration to maintain your population. Well, if you're bringing in people that aren't Japanese or aren't Korean or whatever it is, then you're not maintaining a population. You're replacing the population.
Assuming that every human being isn't equal.
Right.
And their cultures are morally equivalent, if not identical, right? But Japan just said, well, why don't we just send all of our elderly to retirement homes in India?
And
that sounds miserable.
Why? They've been doing that for like 10 years, and it's actually worked out quite well, because their cost halved and the level of service they received doubled.
So you got a bunch of like rich Japanese retirees that are going to live on the cheap as expats in India, and Japan's just not making the babies to replace these people. And what is Tokyo going to be, a ghost town?
So you say me and Hobbs should be starting to plan on our retirement villas in Ecuador and Venezuela? Is that what you're getting at?
You haven't done that already?
No, I guess I need to start.
There's plenty of Americans who retire in Mexico, right?
Yeah. I know a couple of guys that I was in the army with that got early retirement, and they're living high on the hog in Costa Rica.
Yeah, alternatively, you can do like all the Jews in New York when they finish tunneling, and they convert, right? Or they just simply decide they want to make Aliyah, and they put their names down on a list to get a stolen Palestinian home that gets allocated to them. They don't pay any income tax on their income that they import from America to Israel, and they suddenly pay no income tax whatsoever on their 401k or social security distributions and have free housing, and they suddenly find they're able to double their quality of life in their retirement as opposed to downsizing.
Oy vey.
That's what happens.
I think maybe they're onto something. I need to start
160,000 American Jews in East Jerusalem and the West Bank.
I need to start scouting out homes in Argentina, I guess, for 10 or 15 years.
You need to start planning your surgery to get circumcised so you can be an Orthodox Jew.
Oh man! So I wanted to kind of just radically shift gears here into a different area of territory, because one of your favorite people of all time decided he was going to go AWOL for like 2 weeks, and nobody knew where the fuck he was, and apparently he was having prostate cancer surgery or something. So what's the skinny on?
Oh, hold on. Can I give you my theory why he didn't tell Biden? Because he's in charge of shit. He don't need to tell Biden nothing.
Doesn't need to tell Biden anything. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I'm going off of either. It's like, I don't have to keep you informed of anything.
Yeah.
But,
so just imagine the transparency if he was president.
No.
Yeah.
Clear as mud. So one of the things that was kind of floating around Eastern European Telegram, according to my friend Alex, was that Lloyd Austin is actually dead or seriously injured after a secret trip to Ukraine. So I don't think that's true, but I mean, honestly, the way things are going,
seen him, I guess?
I don't know.
I mean, they're really good with body doubles. I mean, look at Fetterman's double. That guy's amazing.
What do you think, Simon? Is he dead? Is he in the hospital in a medically induced coma? Did he get murked in Ukraine?
I think they've now given belatedly quite a detailed explanation as to what actually happened to him medically. Clearly something like, I don't know, a hysterectomy or a prostatectomy, because he literally had his prostate removed, right? So now he's like Captain Limp Dick. And, that's quite personal, right?
Right.
And it was intended to be like a day, and he went home over Christmas, ended up, God knows why, possibly inadequately sterilized surgical tools, with a massive pelvic infection that actually apparently almost paralyzed him. And he had to go into intensive care for like 4 or 5 days. And he was readmitted on New Year's Day. But when he handed over to his deputy, who's woman, Deputy Secretary Hicks, who's no military experience, as I understand it, and has a doctorate in political science, and somehow got appointed to be Deputy Secretary of State for Defense. She was literally on a beach vacation in Puerto Rico and had no secure comms. See, she suddenly found herself in charge of the Defense Department. She wasn't even told for 4 days that it was because he was in intensive care.
I am so glad that the adults are back in charge.
And that's the extraordinary thing, that if she had been in Washington, if she had been told and they'd sent a jet for her and she flew back like 6 hours later, then it would have been tolerable. But the fact that she was literally like in a bikini on the beach, suddenly in charge of the nuclear codes, was absolutely outrageous.
She'll just take the nuclear codes on a little piece of paper and fold it up and just stick it, like women do.
But put it in her favorite Tom Clancy book that she was reading on the beach.
Oh yeah. Okay, so with everything going on with Lloyd Austin's health and everything, I think it might be safe to assume that whatever they had planned for him might not be a go.
Interestingly enough, they said that they'd caught it in the very early stages on a regular blood test, and that he was expected to, despite being limp dick, to be fully recovered. before he ended up with the massive infection. So assuming that he's actually able to walk better than Biden when he comes out eventually from the hospital, because he's still there, right? He's been there now 10 days, which is a long time, right? He supposedly indicated that he was willing to resign. Biden said that even if he put it in writing, he refused to accept it. So that issue got taken out of the table. And what was interesting is 30 minutes after the airstrikes on Yemen started tonight, it was announced in the Military Times. You have Military Times, Army Times, Navy Times, Air Force Times. There's 4 of them, right?
Yep.
So in Military Times, it was announced that the Defense Department Inspector General had started an investigation into Austin 30 minutes into the air attacks on Yemen.
So I think it's pretty safe to say that he didn't call the shots on that one.
Well, in terms of the timing of the announcement of the investigation into him, that certainly was completely buried. And it's now also completely burying the Israeli response to the charges of genocide against them in the International Court of Justice tomorrow, which will be taking place from 3 a.m. your time until 6 a.m.
The whole situation's weird. I mean, if this story was coming out of Russia, like Putin's Secretary of Defense was MIA and now he's in the hospital and now they're investigating him, I mean, it would seem very weird.
I think I said it on the last show that we had, that if America saw what America's doing, then America would be invading America tomorrow to stop America from doing what they're doing to America.
This whole thing just stinks. There's some weird shit going on here. And I like maybe the idea that Lloyd Austin was doing kind of a power struggle because he realized how weak Biden is, and now, somebody else stepped in now that Austin's out of the picture. I mean, you've got this puppet president who obviously isn't calling the shots. Who knows who's pulling strings?
What I haven't managed to figure out yet is they did that strike on the deputy leader of the popular militia forces.
Oh, that was Iraq. A big fuck up.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so who did they give the order to? Because Austin supposedly was unconscious in an intensive care unit. Mm-hmm. So literally, who the fuck did they tell, start wasting the tower heads?
Right. And who gave that order?
Okay, so then
that's a big order to give. I mean, that gets us kicked out of Iraq if you pull that.
It is getting us kicked out of Iraq. It is getting us kicked out of Iraq, right? So, Hicks suddenly finds she's like the default person. She's like, I know nothing about this. That gets back to Sullivan and the National Security Advisor, and he literally runs in apparently to Biden going like, Austin's been unconscious for 4 days.
And Sullivan's the one who babysat.
That's the first thing that Biden knew about it was on Thursday last week.
Sullivan's the one who babysits Jean-Pierre too, isn't he? Isn't he the one that sits in on our briefings sometimes?
No, that's Kirby.
Oh, that's Kirby. Okay.
Admiral Kirby's
Sullivan is the grossly unqualified National Security Advisor. Kirby is the mercenary 2-star admiral who will say anything for money. And then you've got, obviously, Blinken was the campaign fundraiser for Hillary in 2016.
Mr. Voodoo Child.
Yeah, and Austin, interestingly enough, he was a bird colonel in Afghanistan with Tony Schaefer of 9/11 fame. He was interviewed early this morning by Josh Napolitano, and Schaefer said that Austin had been over-promoted 5 times and that he should never have made brigadier, let alone sec def.
Oh, boy.
Well, that does bring up a very interesting point, though, where he said he was stationed in Afghanistan. I mean, surely he would have understood that you can't assassinate on Iraqi soil without getting kicked out. So, who made that call? That's a good, interesting thing to bring up.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Iraqi prime minister said they want the Americans out as quickly as possible. On the flip side, it appears that they just literally this week got a 10-year lease extension on that massive Air Force base in Qatar that's got accommodation facilities for 10,000 American troops. So any people they have to take out of Iraq, they're going to put them straight into Qatar.
Just
How
be a hop,
convenient.
skip, jump away. Yeah.
Yes, literally just straight down the Persian Gulf. But very vulnerable, once again, to Iranian missile attacks.
Well, and we're getting 5 minutes left in the show. We didn't even hit on that part yet with the Houthis.
Oh,
And
we need to
yeah.
discuss that, because it's really kicking off. I mean, as you would expect, I've been translating all the statements from the various representatives of Ansar Allah, and funny enough, but before it went kinetic this evening, I listened to. Unfortunately, I missed the end of it, but a good 30-minute kind of theological broadcast via Twitter from one of the top Yemeni guys, and he was talking about faith and how standing with the Palestinians as a Muslim was like a tenet of faith. It was quite an interesting, intellectual and theological discussion. And they're all in, absolutely all in. And their prestige in the Arab world has soared because of that. Absolutely soared. And now we find that the Egyptians allowed the British to fly from Cyprus to take part in the attack, all 4 of their old 20-year-old Typhoon Eurofighters. And the Americans were blocked by the Omanis, but given permission by the Saudis to fly from Qatar over Saudi Arabia to hit the Yemenis. So the Egyptians and the Saudis basically look like dogs at this point. So that's done themselves an enormous amount of harm in the eyes of the Arab world. But it leaked like a sieve out of the British government. They had what's called Cobra, which is their kind of like civil defense force meeting. It was called on an emergency basis in the morning. Then in the afternoon, they had their National Security Council meeting. Then at 7:45 p.m., so that's 1:45 Nebraska, they had a cabinet meeting by Zoom, which is extremely unusual because normally it's in person only, right? And then they briefed the head of the opposition party and the shadow defense secretary, and every single step of that leaked out to the British mainstream media. And they're like, there's only one explanation for this. And they kind of like put 2 and 2 together, and we got 4.474 or something, and figured out that they were going to hit Yemen, because the defense secretary in Britain for 2 days had been mouthing off about it. So, I mean, the Yemenis are claiming that they shot down either an F-22 or an F-35. That's been denied. They claim they've hit an American ship. That's been denied. But imagine if several pilots had been lost because the Brits couldn't keep a secret for 2 days. I mean, you've got to be pretty uncomfortable flying over, a hot air defense zone, because the Brits were like chatting to the equivalent of the New York Times for no good reason, right?
No.
So it really was like, Operation Clusterfuck, being governed by Colonel Blimp, because General Blimp was unconscious in ICU.
Yeah. God dang. It's almost like we've been so accustomed to counterinsurgency operations over the last.
Well, it is the kind of war America has enjoyed for the last 25 years, flying around the world, meeting interesting people and killing them from air.
Right.
I mean, that's what we're really good at. It's the only thing we're good at now, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, we're so accustomed to that style of warfare where OPSEC is more of a suggestion than a necessity, that when it comes time to
It's secondary to your publicity campaign.
exactly right, you know, now that we're actually getting into an area or into a conflict where
So we were told initially that the British Parliament was going to be summoned on Friday and there would be a vote. That was then wound back, and the opposition leader said that he was willing to wait until after being briefed, even though the parliamentary procedure is, unless it's a national security emergency, that it's supposed to be put to a vote. That's the way it's been done for the last 35 years or something. Okay, so they haven't had the vote. There's clearly no national security emergency. They jammed through the resolution condemning the Houthis in the UN Security Council last night. That was a massive, astronomical fuck up by the Chinese, the Russians, and the Algerians. Why China or Russia didn't veto that? I when that happened, I'm like, this, even though it doesn't read as an authorization for military force, America is going to say that it's sufficient or equivalent, or it says the word UN at the top or something. And that's exactly what they did. They were like, oh, we've got this piece of paper that's actually like an order for toilet paper that we're going to wave around and say completely justifies us killing a load of brown people. And somehow the Chinese and the Russians didn't find that blindingly obvious. It certainly was to me. And the Algerians, who have just got on the Security Council to replace the United Arab Emirates, somehow they didn't figure it out, but they couldn't have blocked it because they didn't have a veto. So they could have voted against it, but there was 11 in favor. So it required a permanent member to actually exercise a veto. The Russians put forward 3 amendments, all of which were defeated. So they obviously were suspicious because they were trying to change the text. But if you don't get your amendment and you've got a veto, what do? Veto, right? It's pretty simple. I mean, it's real basic, simple shit, right? But they've made this mistake repeatedly since they didn't turn up for the vote that launched the Korean War in 1950. They literally didn't show up.
So what do you see going forward next week on this Yemen thing? Is that going to get hotter?
Next week it's just crazy. We've got the Taiwanese elections on Saturday, right?
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, if China ever wanted a gimme, it's next week. If America's knee deep in Yemen, right? We've got Davos, the World Economic Forum, starting on Monday. On Sunday, they're having a pre-meeting with 70 individual national security advisors from all over the NATO and Western world, who are going to meet with Zelensky and a whole load of military-industrial complex CEOs. Okay, then we've got Davos the whole week. We've got the World Health Organization Executive Committee meeting.
The Iowa caucus too next week.
And Iowa caucus all on Monday, all 3 of those events on Monday. Then it's being forecast that DeSantis is going to drop out. Supposedly, we saw he had that hot mic moment where old
Christie,
Fatty Christie, said that Newcomb Haley didn't have a hope in hell.
She doesn't.
But supposedly he said that if DeSantis was willing to be her VP, that possibly together they might be able to defeat Trump in the long run.
And that's what Vivek was
and
forecasting.
Vivek has been suggesting that as well. Vivek clearly is angling out in the open to be vice president. And Trump announced on Fox last night in his town hall that he has chosen his vice president, but he can't announce it yet. And what's interesting about that is if it's not, well, it can't be DeSantis because they're both registered in Florida and the
Right.
VP and the president can't come from the same state. Could be Haley, but she's been backstabbing him like crazy. Christie's been saying that he should be in prison. So that's out of the question. So if he's chosen his VP, that means in theory that person's been screened by the FBI or held previous high federal office, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't apply to Swampy. So if he tells them that he's made the decision and it's done and dusted, it's accepted, right? And he hasn't spoken and offered it to Swampy, Swampy now knows it's not him. So he now no longer has any reason to be kissing Trump's arse, which he's been doing for the last 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then at some point, Trump's going to reveal it. We've got the same situation with Kennedy, because in several states, if you're running as an independent, you have to name your vice president candidate when you register for the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't have a convention.
Right.
Because you've got no primaries, right? So he literally soon is going to have to name his vice president. I'm frankly am astonished and have been proven wrong that he didn't announce Tulsi Gabbard, who he's literally declared that he loves, and has the requisite military experience that he does not have. Okay.
Right.
They would be a very, very good combination if she's willing.
Right.
But we're waiting to see if that happens. We've got 2 Democrats who are running against Biden still, this Phillips guy and Marianne Williamson, and yet there are now 4 American states that have said they're not willing to put their names on a primary ballot.
Yep.
It's absolutely, we literally look worse than Russia at this point.
Yeah, we do. I don't know if you watched the 4th hour of Alex Jones today or not, but Roger Stone was on, and he was talking about Trump's possible vice presidential pick, and he claimed that he doesn't know who it is, but he's got ideas of what type of person it is, and people that are close to the campaign have said something about how it's probably going to be a black guy in the vein of
Tim Scott.
No, not Tim Scott. It was right at the front of my head.
Ben Carson.
Yeah, a guy like Ben Carson or
Ben Carson would be good.
Byron Donaldson, somebody like that.
Come on, Byron Donaldson. Is he even old? Is he even old enough?
I don't know.
35 or something.
But I'm not saying that those names are in contention, but somebody in that vein, somebody who's has those types of values.
I would think would be an excellent choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Highly intellectual. He's like a full doctor, right?
Yeah.
Has been out of the political picture for quite a while, though. I'm not sure that would bring Trump many votes. Right. And to be honest, I can't honestly say whether he's well regarded in the African American community or not. I don't see any reason to disrespect him, but he may be seen as too much like the man, so to speak.
Yeah. Even though
Donaldson is absolutely inconceivable. That would just be laughing.
Yeah, he's from Florida also, so he's out.
Yeah,
he's out. So he's out. And then who was the other one that you mentioned?
Just those 2. He said somebody like Ben Carson or.
I thought there was
I said Larry Elders, but I don't know.
Yeah, that was the one, Larry Elder, because Larry Elder,
who was an absolute. He is a real rhino. That would be putting Glenn Beck on, right? And he was a disaster when he ran his campaign against Newsom on the recall.
That, and also because Larry Elder has kind of a more bombastic personality that I think would probably conflict with Trump's ego.
Yeah. So that's yeah. So Carson, of those three, I would suggest is the only possibility there. But going for the black vote is a really important demographic that it's clear Trump is considering, because as we've seen in Chicago and in New York, where the black community are really feeling the effect of the illegal migrant flood, they're thoroughly pissed off, and they realize that both in terms of unemployment, support for historical black colleges and universities, access to the White House, they were much better off under Trump, who also did the prison reform to reverse what Biden and Clinton had done in the 90s in terms of jailing blacks for crack cocaine. Trump, on the advice of his daughter, undid that to a large extent. And so there's 5 good reasons why the black community should be voting 50% in favor of Trump. But they still think that at best he's only going to get 20%. I mean, these people are literally turkeys voting for Christmas, or in American terms, turkeys are voting for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got 3 years experience of being shafted on top of a generation of being shafted and repeatedly promised and let down by the Democrats running Illinois, Jacksonville, Milwaukee, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. I mean, you really got to have a very flat learning curve, but maybe that's consistent with the educational achievements in those cities as well.
Yeah, the Democrats are going to know that they're in trouble when bangers on the south side of Chicago start screaming, "Build that wall."
Yeah.
Well,
I
no,
would guess they already are.
They really are. They really are. You see those meetings in Chicago and stuff. They're furious.
Oh yeah. The worm is turning, I think, and they are in a bit of a panic.
Did you notice on Saturday Trump gave 2 town hall speeches to relatively small crowds rather than these like soccer stadium type events? And the one that was at Newton in Iowa, it was 2 hours and 6 minutes long. It was long. And I hadn't been bothering, but by sheer chance on that occasion, I decided to watch it, and actually was very good. And at 2 hours and 1 minute, for 40 seconds, Trump talked about doing mass deportations like Eisenhower did in the 1950s for up to 16 million illegal immigrants. And that was Operation Wetback that Eisenhower did in 1954. That was literally the name of it, Operation Wetback. And the guy who ran it had been convicted as a teen for murdering a Latino.
That's not a good look, but
not a good look. And so Trump was saying, I'm going to do that times 10. And it was a 40-second clip. I found it and freaked out. And we did a special show on Saturday just to focus on those 40 seconds.
Yeah, Operation Wetback right here on Wikipedia. So I'll have to read about that one.
Yeah, no, I'll send you the clip if you don't believe me.
No, I believe you. I just never heard of that one.
I sent it to InfoWars. Have they run it? Here we are. Sunday show, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, still haven't run it. I sent them the immigration report from the UN that validates what Harrison's been claiming since he was like 8 years old, and they haven't run that. They ran some of the global risk policy report from the World Economic Forum a day after I sent it, and only because Elon Musk had referred to it. I mean, I don't know why, and I've certainly got nothing against Harrison, who's been nothing but helpful with me, but they're literally like a week behind the news at the moment.
They probably just don't want to have to say the word wetback on syndicated radio.
You know, they don't have to. They just say the
Yeah.
mass
Operation Beaner.
the mass deportation operation, which is exactly how Trump described it. And he mentioned Eisenhower. You put in mass deportation Eisenhower, and it pops up with Operation Wetback. You don't have to spell it out.
Yep.
Also, apparently in 1855, there was the Greaser Act used to send Mexicans back to Mexico.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's at the bottom of that Wikipedia article.
Wow.
They just really didn't pull any punches. It was a different time.
What a way to end the show, on a little casual racism.
Oh, you know, I made the point to George Galloway when I was on his show for the 33rd time yesterday. I actually made a little Masonic joke. I said that I was now going to be operating under the York Rite as opposed to the Scottish Rite, because that maxes out at the 33rd rank, right?
Yep.
And
get into your Freemasonry insider info there, huh?
Yeah. He laughed because he's
Scottish,
Scot, so he appreciated the Scottish Rite. And I said, you know, the situation that the International Court of Justice finds themselves in, which is clearly a political organization. You know, they're judges appointed by governments and take orders, right, if they want to get their pension. And I said, but they're basically faced with a situation in terms of ruling on this genocide, like the US Supreme Court in what was it, 1855 or thereabouts, with the Dred Scott decision to uphold the legality of slavery. These people are now going to have to turn a blind eye to genocide.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, it's professionally and for their reputation for the next 100 years, it puts them in a really, really difficult position.
Mm-hmm. Well, great.
We went from casual racism to genocide. Let's close that. Let's close it out. Join us next
guys,
week. We'll talk about all the.
We haven't gone nuclear by next Thursday. I'll be, perfectly happy to assist on the foreign relations type stuff, should you wish. But may I say, a belated Happy New Year, and thank you ever so much for inviting me once again.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Simon, and thanks everybody for joining us. You know, weird show, but first of the new year, a lot going on. Join us next week, same time. We'll have all this crazy shit going down. Yes, sir. You have?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, should go without saying, but go to our merch store, Rhodes No. 2 Liberty.com. If you're watching this on Rumble or YouTube and you haven't given us a like and a subscribe, please go ahead and do that. Drop some comments down there. It boosts things in the algorithm. Share it with your friends. Go over R2L Pod on Twitter, over on the X, to give us a follow over there. I don't really do a whole lot on there. I just basically drop the links to the show on Thursdays, and I doubt that we're going to have anything tomorrow. I contacted Mike Shelby from Forward Observer and Gray Zone Intel on Monday, and he said he does want to come on the show. He wants to do a 2023 year in review and predictions for 24. He asked what time. I told him what time. I haven't heard back yet. That was on Tuesday. So I'm going to bug him again tomorrow and see if we might have a show tomorrow. Maybe not. Maybe next week. I don't know. But Mike Shelby is always a good show. Good guy to have on. And I think Mike and Simon would get along pretty well.
Yeah. And check out Simon and Sam on Weaponized News.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, we'd be most happy to inform your audience until your next show. We're definitely going to have a show on Saturday at 7 p.m. Pacific, as opposed to our normal 7 p.m. Eastern on the Monday through Friday schedule. And we're thinking, and you guys might like to be involved in this, of doing our first X, Twitter, Spaces on Sunday if everything kicks off in Iraq and Lebanon and Yemen. So I will send you an invite for that. I don't know what time yet. It'll be a minimum of an hour and a maximum of 2 hours, probably on Sunday early evening, because Sam's like 3 hours behind me in California.
Awesome. Well, there we go. Lots of stuff to keep you guys occupied and keep you hungry for more. So from me and Ben and Simon and everybody else behind the scenes,
stay honky.
all right, I got work tomorrow.